Hello all. Apologies for the Archmage episode where there's no sound, and for the fact that I played for such a long time that you didn't see a whole lot. First things first, I'm going to go into my Archmage. Deviant Die. And I'm going to just try and reread that Shaloran lore that I missed in Chapter 3. Hopefully I won't have any more problems with like running out of sound, because there's so many parts of this game where I want to be using my voice and the voice morpher that it'll make a little sense if I don't have it. Alright, so right now I have 122 gold, so I can buy... Oop, it's gone, so maybe I can't buy that. Alright, let's see here. I believe you can go through your lore, show known lore, and you can actually read stuff here if you want. So... can I get this into expanded form? No. Okay, so I guess, well, here was the chapter 3 I did buy, so it is right here. Why not? I guess we'll read it from here. It's not that bad. I didn't buy voice morphing with this, so I won't buy voice morphing again. We'll just quickly run over this. Spellblaze Chronicle 3, The Far Portal, from the Memoirs of Maj'Eyal, leader of Grand Council of Elia. Chapter 3, The Far Portal. Why are ye not leader? Asked Linali, resting her head in her hand, with her naked form strewn across my bed. I looked at her surprised. Surprised, but a sudden question. My mind struggled briefly with the strange query, still recovering from the heat of sex, but a minute before. Why should I be leader? I asked back. Because ye are strong, of course, she responded. I deem me stronger in battle than any of your kin. You should rule with such strength. I chuckled softly. Mere strength is not enough to rule a people. It requires responsibilities, careful decision-making, and above all, politics. I have no interest in such matters. If Finnis is far better suited to those sort of things, give me a sword and shoulders to lead into battle, and I am content. Let the leaders worry about where I should put my blade. She was quiet a moment, and seemingly dissatisfied with the response. You are not happy with the current plan still. For a moment I was struck with shock. It surprised me how clearly she divined my inner thoughts. I had not expressed my concerns to anyone, yet she could so easily read me. 5 weeks it had been since we first met, and it seemed like there was nothing I could hide from her keen sight. The preparations for the Spellblaze were well underway. Torfel of Karkul had returned to his northern citadel, but he left his daughters as ambassadors to aid in our designs. It means Linali and I have had many opportunities to meet, though we kept in secret. Few of my race would understand or approve of such liaison, and none of us could afford scandal. Yet I could not resist this human nature's advances, nor she mine. I am a warrior, I said to her finally, getting brusquely from my bed and recovering my robes. I settle my battle face my foe, not by toying with relics from afar. It irks me that we must deal with our enemies in such craven way. But does it not excite ye, using these chateau ruins? She said, putting a finger to her lower lip, as she still languished in my bed, the sheep sticking tightly to her bare skin. She seemed visibly aroused by her thoughts, such power lying dormant for so long, ready to be summoned to our control. How it were I command to so great a venture. I shook my head sadly as I finished buttoning up my doublet. I do not trust those ruins. We Shaloran are mighty, but we have yet to reach the heights of the Chatul, nor do we truly understand the devices they have left behind. My thoughts are more with you, your sister Nera, on this. We should stick to what abilities we have mastered without stretching ourselves to such grand experimentation. Well, now I looked at me intently, a touch of humor in her dark eyes. If ye were leader, then ye could stop this, but then I would have to hate ye. I allowed myself a thin smile. Well, that would indeed be a terrible and dangerous thing. I finished dressing while Linali still lay in my bed, her face reflective. I must go now to check on the latest operations at the Far Portal. You are welcome to join me. She shook her head languidly. Nay, I wish to rest more. And besides, hearing their reports would but make me jealous. Leave me here a while. I will depart in secret later. I left my chamber den, dark thoughts now brooding at the back of my mind. The date was coming closer when our plans would come to fruition, and a great Spellblaze would be unleashed. A heavy foreboding lay over my heart, yet alternatives seemed grim. The war of the Orcs was going badly, with few races able to secure their borders, and taxing the brutes ever increasing. Their numbers seemed inexhaustible. Though they had little skill in warfare, they could bring great harm to unprotected townsteads, and even enough force to bring down cities. One human kingdom had collapsed under their attacks but a week before. After that, many who initially rejected our plans came begging to our protection. The Spellblaze seemed our only hope against imminent disaster. Such thoughts were weighing on my mind as I passed from my chambers in the palace, down the courtyard by the main gate. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw a swish of long red hair, and spun around thinking Lionel had followed me. But the golden robes and bright eyes of Nera revealed otherwise. Expecting someone else, she asked with a wide smile, seeing a surprised look on my face. I was deep in thought, I explained, bowing slightly to greet her. I am just on my way to inspect the far portal operations. Perhaps I shall join ye, she said quickly, not waiting for my invitation. I nodded my assent and guided her to my carriage. As soon as we took off east, the moons changed. She will only hurt ye, said Nera suddenly. I cursed quietly, understanding her meaning. Are there no secrets to be had in Maj'Eyal? I muttered. Not between sisters, and especially not between twins. She smiled warmly at me. Yet there was no humor in her eyes. I mean it though. I love my sister, but I know her ways. She be fickle, and will to do her own things when she likes. Do not be surprised when she bores of ye, nor hurt. I am quite capable of taking care of myself, I said in clipped tone. She gazed into my eyes a moment and then turned away to stare out the window. Well, I've warned ye, she replied softly, a touch of sadness in her voice. Was it jealousy, perhaps, that stirred such an outburst, and for her sister's attention or for mine? I never did discover. The rest of the trip was spent in sullen silence. The sun was setting behind a carriage, casting a long shadow on the path ahead, and bathing the land about in crimson light. It seemed for a moment that like we rode into some demon's plain, a pitch-black shadows melting into blood-red soil, whilst cold white stars began to spear through the sky above. I shivered suddenly as the ruins came into view. Few church ruins have been discovered, which even come close to matching the grandeur of those which were near Elvia. Many centuries our people spent excavating them, digging deep into the ground, ever careful not to damage or upset the relics. The centerpiece was a crystal tower. From the surface all that could be seen of it was wide, even-sided square, which when cleaned of soil revealed a white stone smoother than marble. But delving down, our archaeologists found it plummeted deep, deep below the ground. Half a mile it went down, the featureless white stone not bearing a single mark or engraving anywhere on its surface, until it ended suddenly and without foundation. It was like the whole tower was separated from the earth, some strange thing of the stars that had dropped from the sky and lay sleeping beneath the soil. Some years earlier, our people had solved the invisible ruins that allowed it to be open, revealing vast crystalline halls and chambers arrayed in geometric patterns of sublime beauty. Light sparkled and shone from every surface, and the walls seemed to hum with energy. Many shafts and passageways could only be navigated by flight, and at top was found a grand room large enough to encompass the whole palace of Elvia. At its center was a fire portal, a raised stage 40 feet in diameter, and crackling with energy upon which slowly spun a cloud of stars. It was beautiful and frightening, enchanting and terrifying. No power of the Shaloran could discern its operation, though through careful experimentation they were able to manipulate its energies. Never could we get a true grasp of the forces that lay beneath. Nera and I descended to the base of the tower, smothered in the cold shells of the excavated ruin. I nodded to the guards as we passed through the square right entrance, and Nera's eyes instantly enlarged in wonder. The scintillating rooms were eye-catching to be sure, but they were all so desolate and empty. I tried to imagine what it must have looked like from when filled with Shatul. How did they all die? I asked for my breath as we traversed the crystal halls, a question many had asked before. The sorcerer picked up on my words and laughed softly. It be a mystery, of course. My mother once taught me that they killed themselves in great civil war, using magics far beyond our imaginings. I wonder, said I. We had our own records, of course, which we didn't share with the younger races, but they were not so clear-cut as many myths that had spread over the ages. We reached the central shaft, and from there levitated up past floors and floors of abandoned chambers, living spaces, workshops, storerooms, and many other areas of purpose undefined by our lore masters. Finally, after ascending for several minutes, we rose into the grand chamber of the far portal, and never gasped to see its size. Our eyes soon settled on the great chateau far portal, sparks from it reflecting from the roof hundreds of feet above. About it were many of the Shaloran mages in silken robes, and Epinus himself was leading the operations. He broke from his advisors as he saw us arrive, and strode towards us with a confident smile on his face. Though he wore the great robes of a research mage, he still bore his great golden staff, luminous token of his position as king. "Ah, General Arian," he said, "you have come at last, and brought the cockerel girl with you. How splendid!" I gave a small bow. "Your Majesty, I am here for an update on our operations." Yes, of course," he said with a distant hand gesture, "and doubtless the girl here is to make sure we know what we're doing. If Nera was offended, she covered up well. It would be my delight to see evidence of your skill and power of the ruins, Lord Epinus." The king smiled and nodded then, and called to some of his aides. "Prepare the topographic demonstration using the acute fire strand." He turned back. "It is not mere skill and power, of course, that we can show you, but so whilst I join the others." He went with two of the senior research mages, then to the front of the far portal. They faced each other and began a low humming in unison, and slowly it seemed that the sparks from the far portal began to flicker readily. Over the course of a few minutes, their hum became a higher-pitched chant, but softly sung, and still in perfect unison. As they raised their staffs, there appeared above the far portal an image of flames, and looking at it, both Nera and I marveled, for we could see clearly that it was an image of ourselves, looking upwards as if we were staring into a mirror. Our features and movements were all clearly discernible, down to the smallest detail, all carved out of flickering orange fire. Then chanting rose higher, and it seemed the image zoomed out, so that we saw the far portal nearby us and images scattered about. But still the focus soared, upwards till we were but specks in a wide hall, until the image was displaced by a white square, with caverns and edges dug into the earth about it. I knew we were looking at the top of the crystal tower from above. The view widened, and I could see the land rush away, the same elva to the west. The chanting rose higher, and now the sea could be seen, and mountains to the northwest, and all the land about. And soon the continent was visible, right to the frozen north, and the ocean wrapped all around about, and it seemed small white stars were dotted about the landscape. The scene reached the crescent. Before us hung the image of a whole Maj'Eyal, a glow of fire suspended in mid-air, slowly turning. Then the chanting stopped, and the image disappeared. I could hear besides me Nera suddenly gasp for air, as if she had not dared draw breath from the last few minutes. "You see now," FS grinned with pleasure, "from the smallest details to the grand scale, we can manipulate the far portal's energy. And did you see those red points marked across the image? They are the other far portals spread across the world, and this one can connect to them all. With careful, delicate control, we can harmonize the energy of them all and use it to our will. I'm afraid your sword can be no match for this, Arian." I had no words to respond, and only nodded softly, still in awe of what I had seen. Nera seemed the same, and I could see her now staring at the far portal with the same eager eyes as her sister. She was converted. Yet my hand strayed across the hilt of the mooncutter, and my heart still murmured with unease. So that was the chapter I missed before, and I also found this Ziggurar lore. This is a story of my salvation, and I found it in the unknown, where I found the Assassin Lord and the Merchant, that dungeon in North. I'll read this one too. "I used to be a potion merchant in Durf. I brewed alchemy talks and illustrations for locals and travelers. My trade was good, and I lived very happily from the gold I earned. For a young woman to have such business, I was very proud. One day, however, several people in my town fell ill from a mysterious disease. Rumors spread that my potions were to blame. People stopped coming to my store. My business was in ruins, and I soon ran the risk of becoming destitute. Then one of the elders died, and though he had been ill for some time, I was blamed for his death. People said I had laid a hex on him, and murmurs arose of witchcraft. I still remember how peaceful the evening had seemed when the townsfolk came to me. I was looking up the brightness of the stars and clear crescent summer glow moon, thinking of how I could restart my business. When I heard shouts in the distance, I saw a crowd appear from round the corner, advancing with their torches. I screamed for help, but they grabbed me, threw my door, smashed through my windows, and grabbed me. They dragged me outside and set their torches to my house. I was stripped to my skin and beaten heavily, whilst they cursed and jeered, and even the man who had been my fiancé spat in my face and cursed me. They pulled me over grass and stone to the town square, and though half blind for the tears and swollen flesh, I could still make out the wooden stake they were erecting. I tried to cry out. I tried to beg for mercy, but the response was to hold me down by my throat and pull out my tongue with the blacksmith's tongs. As I coughed up blood, they put me against a wooden pole and used barbed cords to tie my wrist to it above my head. The pain was unbearable, and I passed out and did not wake until I could feel the burning at my feet. The crowd were cheering as the smoke began to wrap around me, and they cheered louder with every pain scream I released from my lungs. I was choking from the smoke, barely able to breathe, and I could no longer feel my legs. Just when I felt my consciousness slipping away again, I heard a commotion, and a woman's voice shouted out, "She is no witch!" Then I saw some people coming towards me, and at the front was a halfling woman in dark armor. She rushed toward me, unheeding of the flames, and with a swift flick from her longsword she cut my bonds. She caught me as I fell and pulled me away from the fire, laying me down on the ground. I saw her soft face above mine as she whispered to me, "Tell me, child, do you reject magic in all its forms?" I nodded my head. I could not say no to such bright eyes. She wiped the tears streaming down my face and kissed my forehead. "Then you will be safe. Rest now." At once I passed out. When I awoke, I was in our village, in a soft bed. There were wrappings around my legs and bandages covering the cuts and bruises over the rest of my body. Healers tended to me, using natural remedies and herbal balms. The halfling woman would come and see me every day to check up on me. I longed for her every visit, and she could speak to me sometimes. She explained how the townsfolk weren't to blame for their actions, and it was all the mage's fault. They were corrupting the world, spreading chaos, and turning people against each other. I realized I was wrong for ever brewing potions. They were infested with arcane energies, and could only bring harm to the world. She explained how she and her friends were helping to save the world to rid her lands of all magic. And she has saved me, not just from a terrible death, but also from the evil influences of the arcane. Even if I still had a tongue, I could not find words to express my thanks to her. In my joy at new life, I leave free from the abominations of magic. Thanks to her help, I can now walk again with the aid of a crutch, and I can find true happiness in my rightful place in nature. I have no voice now to tell my story to others, and so I write down instead. I spread it to the winds. I have suffered from my contact with magic, and others will suffer too. Do not trust in the terrible powers of the deepest arts. They will only betray you and bring you to harm. Turn your back on magic and make others repent too. Find your own salvations in nature's joy before it's too late. Alright, so there's the lore from the last 2 episodes, and that took me only about 17 minutes to read. I think this will just be a full lore episode, so let's just continue doing some lore. And I'll go with Chapter 4, Spellblaze Chronicles. But before I do, I'm just going to take some water to drink because my voice is getting dry. Alright, so Spellblaze Chronicle 4, Before the Dawn. And from the memoirs of Maj'Eyal, leader of the Grand Castle of Elvia, Chapter 4, Before Dawn. I rode my great horse at low trot, surrounded by my lieutenants and their elite cavalry and spell rangers. Besides me on my brown mare, my squire held a banner emblazoned with a flame-wreathed sword, symbol of my personal entourage. The pole seemed to shiver slightly in the young elf's hand, a sign of nervousness. "Hold that banner firm, boy," I said in a commanding tone. The squire suddenly sat upright in his saddle and gripped tight on the banner pole. "Yes, sire," he said, alarmed. "Whatever you say, sire." He kept his head faced forward, but I could see in his eyes glance toward me, desperate for approval. Whatever I say, indeed. I had seen in his gaze on me before, with all the adoration of a young soldier towards his commander, and perhaps a little more. If I had not the joy of Linden's company, then the attention of such a pretty lad would not be unwelcome. But this was not the time for such thoughts. This would be the day of the Spellblaze, and the boy had every right to be nervous. It was few hours after midnight, and already our scouts would be engaged alongside the other races, drawing out the Orcs from their hiding places. We marched through our main offensive lines. We would hem them in before the great conflagration. All around were arrayed spears and swords and mail, glistening in the starlight. Troops upon troops of battle mages in purple robes held aloft glowing staves. It was a sight to behold, yet we knew about also the risk of engaging on open ground with the Orcs in their full numbers. If the Spellblaze failed, then we would suffer greatly. I set up camp upon a low hill overlooking the field, and then left my entourage to seek Karkul's army to the north. As I rode my stallion towards their station, I could see smoke rising in the east. 4 thick grey plumes stood against the pre-dawn light. They would be villages looted and burned by the Orcs as they rampaged against our feigned assaults. The townsteads would be empty, but after this battle there would be nothing left for the residents to return to, a small sacrifice in the game of war that spanned the continent. A 5th column of smoke began to rise. In a greenish haze of early morn, those pillars of smoke suddenly seemed to look like a demonic hand stretching over the world, ready to dig its claws into the earth and rip out the flesh beneath. This, I knew, was the threat the Orcs faced to us all, a menace to all civilization. Whatever price we paid to stop them would be a small one, so we all thought. When I reached the Karkul camp, Maj'Eyal came out to meet me. Her smile was warm at the sight of me, but I could tell from her eyes that she was more excited for the events of the day. Just a few more hours, she whispered, like an impatient child. This will be fascinating. As I came into Karkul Pavilion, I saw Nera inside, and some of her senior mages and delegates from the other human kingdoms. I knew Turfil would not be with them, as he stayed in his northern kingdom with his people. It was not cowardice nor age that held him back from the front lines of war. Indeed, it was said that ever since his wife was killed by the Orcs, he had restrained himself from battle, lest his anger overcome it as he destroyed friend and foe alike in his rage. Yet it was known that sometimes he would venture through the lands alone, and he would bring with a deafening storm of wrath, and the Orcs would cower at the rumors of the approach of Turfil, Tempest of the North. Nera and Maj'Eyal commanded the Karkul forces, and from the firm set looked on their Archmage's faces, it was clear that they were ready for whatever the day would bring. Yet Nera looked troubled, doubt evident in her eyes. "What irks you, sister?" I whispered to Maj'Eyal. "She dumb dream," she responded castily. Nera's eyes shot up. "It were not a dream," she barked. "An omen it were, I tell ye." She turned to me with pleading eyes. "You must believe me, Aryan. Something will go terribly wrong today. I saw last night a terrible sight in my dreams, as it were a memory of long ago. There were a burning city made of glass and silver and marble. As it burned, I did hear the cries of thousands, tens of thousands, young and old, all dying. And then the city fell, for it had been held in the sky, and crashed down to the earth with shattering torment, and spilled across the land. And other cities they were, and pillars of violet light struck up from them, and they were to dance around and filling the air with scent of ozone and seared flesh. Death was everywhere. Death was none we have ever seen. It were no dream, it be message or warning, some forgotten tale of the dangers we play with. We must stop this." Maj'Eyal was tapping her foot impatiently as her sister raved, but I could see some of the other leaders looking worried. I knew I had to quiet Nera down, so I drew myself near and put my hand on her shoulders, looking in her calming eyes and bringing my face close. "It may well be that this is no dream, for this is no day, and even all legends of ages past this will stand out as a day of reckoning. Our civilization is under peril, our way of friend from the Orcish scourge. We rest upon a knife edge, the world balancing on a pivot, and a wrong sway could tip us into darkness and despair forever. Our actions today will decide this. So yes, you have had a warning, you have had a message, and that message is to be strong. For today, we all hold the rein of fate in our palms, and only a steady hand can guide us past the threat of doom that is coming. Nera, can you be that steady hand?" She looked at me with open, hopeful gaze, her fingers clenched round my wrist, as if she sought to draw strength from me. She nodded slowly then. "I'm sorry, Aaron. I'll be strong." I turned to the others, who all seemed rapt by my words. It was clear that leaving them to their own thoughts would only bring trouble. I had to pull them into action straight away. "It begins now," I shouted. "Gather your troops and prepare for the march. Slow and steady, we shall advance carefully. Now we hold the battle, and beyond fire and fury, we will emerge free and victorious. This day shall stand in history forever. This day shall mark a new era for all the races. The day of the Spellblaze is here." They all cheered and rushed to order their troops, taking courage from the duties of command. Nera went to her mages, and I left the pavilion alone. But outside I was being ambushed by Luna, who pulled me into an empty tent with a playful laugh. "You said you'd be no leader," she explained with a grin. "That were a leader's speech if I ever heard one." I shrugged and smiled modestly. I said what I had to. She drew close, and I saw a flush of worry in her face. It were just a dream, right? I could see then beneath all the bravado and humor she was mortally scared. Her fingers trembling as she gazed into my eyes, yearning for reassurance. "It was just a dream," I lied, "and it is a lie I have paid for with all heart and soul. Everything will be all right." I pulled her close and wrapped my arms around her slender frame, and she held me tight to me, still trembling slightly. "Thank you, Ariane," she whispered. Turning up her face, she kissed me. It was the softest, most delicate kiss she'd ever gave me. It was almost the last. We parted then, and I began the lonely ride back to my own troops. My heart was now pounding like a deafening war drum, whilst the words and narratives still echoed round my head. They stirred up a memory in me of a dream I myself had that morning, but that had laid dormant in my mind till then. I was lying in my bed, and floating above me was a shape of light of air, like a figure of a creature I had never seen before. It had long tentacles for arms, and billowing robes floating about it slowly. Where it should have had there was only a small bump, but I could tell it was focused on me. It stretched out long tentacles towards me, as if it was warring against a dark and dangerous threat. A feeling came over me as terrible foreboding and looming portent of doom like no other world had ever seen. As the tip of the tentacle near my brow, everything went black. Was it a dream, some strange foretelling, or could it have been a true apparition, something trying to give me a direct warning? But I had no time for such thoughts. The time of Spellblaze was nearly upon us, and there could be no room for doubt. I spurred my horse onto my fate. Alright, so there's 2 chapters in the Ziggurar lore, and I guess I still have time. Let's still get on to one of my other characters. I think Davian Archer still has a little bit of money, and we'll just go there. So main menu, save. I'll quickly jump on Davian Archer, and I'll just go look for that lore. Chapter 5, I believe it is. I'll drink some water while it's loading. And no, I don't have any money. Okay. One more. I'm just going to check to see if I have any money on my Berserker, and if I don't, then I'll say that's enough for this recording. Alright, so it's my Berserker who has some money. So we'll go read the 4th chapter of the Berserker. And let's see here. Before Dawn, that's chapter 4. And now we're going to go to chapter 5, The Day of Spellblaze. From the Memoirs of Aaron Gallo, chapter 5, The Day of Spellblaze. I loosened Mooncutter in its sheath as the troops marched forward, my grip tightening on the reins, holding my horse in check lest it gallop ahead in excitement. I could see my squire to my left doing the same. The tension in the air was palpable. Before us, less than a mile away, the vanguard of Orcish armies were now visible. We stirred up their nest, and they had responded in full force. They were like a shadowy bright that swallowed up the horizon, a great pestilence that threatened to consume the world. Before me, the armies of Shaloran seemed small in comparison, but I knew our strength was not told by mere numbers. Trumpets blared from the bulwarks at the front, as they were ready to engage with the first wave when needed. To the north were archers to crumble their initial resistance, and at their flank a legion of spell riders, their hand glowing with arcane energies as they sat atop their fearsome steeds. On the south was a regular cavalry, the great swords, the armored knights, and the main bulk of our mages readying support spells. Here and there senior battle mages were dotted about, ready to move swiftly to points of intense activity and blast it away. There was no need to have more than one of them in any place. Alone they could decimate a score of orcs with ease. Drums beat loudly in the distance, and a clamor arose from the enemy. They had with them trained beasts and trolls, and were arrayed in swords, maces, and crude armors. One took up a loud howl, and the others joined in, and the air seemed to reverberate with their ugly voices. The cacophony was unsettling, but my army responded with a display of power. Swords and spear tips rose into the air, and crackles of lightning shot up to the heavens. The sparks shining off in gleaming blades of armor, the Orcish army gasped in dismay. Eastern Skyline was beginning to glow red, and we knew the dawn would break any moment. The start of the great Spellblaze. The day is here, one of our warriors shouted out, and it was taken up elsewhere by marching troops. The day is here, they began to chant, anticipating the glory to come. The day is here, my squire sang, his voice full of youthful joy and hope. The day is here, we all shouted in unison, the pride of the Shaloran kingdoms in our hearts as we watched the first rays of sunlight shine out of the horizon. The day is here, the day is here, the day is... Silence. All at once our voices dropped, and a terrible booming silence swept over the battlefield. We could feel it, every one of us. So attuned are our race to the flows of magic. It was like having a breath sucked from our lungs. or the earth disappeared from beneath one's feet. All our mail channels were gone. Changed suddenly, arcane energy beyond all reach. Groans and murmurs began to rise, as mages clutched at their heads in sudden despair. I saw my squire lurch forward in his saddle, and begin to vomit uncontrollably, my standard slipping from his hand, whilst eyes fell to the ground in pain. I struggled to battle, an overwhelming migraine, blotches appearing in front of my eyes, and with great effort of will I managed to keep control of myself, and began to seek out new paths and mana. But there was something wrong, terribly wrong. Like a river run off its course, the flow of magic across the whole Maj'Eyal had changed. What could have caused this? And now I had to fight years of attunement and training that had taught me to naturally line the known flows and courses so that I might find new paths and new sources. And as I did, so I put my powers in divination, and what I discovered shocked me to my core. The Orcs saw us in disarray and began to charge, but my attention was turned west, not east, towards Elvia and the Crystal Tower, where our leaders had manipulated a territorial fire pole. But the tower, I felt, was gone, crumpled into the earth, and from there now entered a wave of white-hot flame. The Orcs tore into our army with little resistance, their weapons tearing through the elven troops, but they were soon met by a wave of destruction energy far greater. "Shields!" I shouted out as the whole sky turned redder than blood, but above the sun-deafening roar of the roasting air, I was not heard. It would have helped little anyway. The defenses of my armor was without the usefulness for some mana. Spears of flame streaked down on our heads, shearing through flesh and steel in an instant, and sinking into the rock. The ground shook and a loud blast up from the deep holes torn into the rock. I put an arcane shield about myself with great effort of will. I saw my squire raise a hand to do the same, but a blaze tore off his arm. He didn't even get to scream before an wave burned through the top half of his torso, spraying blood to evaporate instantly, and the air became a full red amidst of fire. I leapt from my horse as it neighed and settled and fell burning to ash. Another wave came, and I tried my strength with my shield, but the force of it took me off my feet and sent me flying. I was thrashing through the air like a swirling leaf, unable to do anything more than struggle to maintain my protection. All about my army was being utterly decimated. Ranks and ranks of soldiers and formations turned to crisps or torn apart by their raw energies. The Orcs were the same, a huge rent in the ground swallowing a great number of their troops. Blasts of lava soon fired upward and rained down for miles around, turning into glowing rivers of death and swept across the consumed landscape. How I managed to stay alive, I am still not sure. I almost slipped from consciousness at several points, but by mere mental tenacity I never knew I managed to stay focused and kept my protective shield active. I became less aware of my surroundings, not knowing if the bubble of my war was flowing through air, or fire, or blood, or swallowed into the depths of Maj'Eyal, into some hell never before witnessed. At last, after what seemed like a torturous age, the wave of energy passed, and I found myself lying alone on an outcrop of cracked parched earth, the air of haze and heat about me. I struggled to my feet and looked around, nothing but desolation in all directions. Steam and smoke rose from rents in the ground, and blood, limbs, and ashes were soon all about over. Nothing was alive. In a daze, I dared my I was alone with hundreds of thousands who had stood here for a short while before. Friends and comrades, mentors, people I had never known, and ones I had dearly close to, all gone. A sudden pain lanced in my heart as I thought of Nellie. She can only be dead, surely. I gritted my teeth and summoned the energy to levitate, and as I rose, I began to get my bearings around the changed landscape. Slowly I pushed northeast, passing over devastation beyond belief. I struggled to keep a grip on humanity as a scent of burnt flesh and blood surrounded me, my vision filled with a horrid landscape beyond imagination. The utter silence more deafening than any sound I had ever heard. Eventually, I came near to where the cockerel army had stood, and cast about a ruined land for some sign of life. Then faintly I detected something, some small sliver of life, and searched it out and found her. Her clothes had been mostly burnt off, her hair half turned to ash, and the blood was seeping freely from the burns all across her body. A weak shield still hung over her, but as I knelt down and laid a hand on her, it vanished. Crawling she gasped, a breath before whispering, "Nera," and sinking into unconsciousness. She was still alive, but barely. I looked about and saw no signs of her sister, or any of the rest of her troops, other than the scorched flesh and blackened bones that marked the scouring path swept by the blaze. I began to cast what healing spells I could on the alley, but I could tell it was not enough, and my weakened powers could not hope to save her. I began to cry openly, thinking all I had lost this day, all had gone so terribly wrong. Hope had turned to crisis, and the cruelty of fate was far too much for me to bear. Cradling my dying love's head in my lap, I turned my face to the sky and screamed, Torment was in my cracked voice, and I raged against all the injustice of life and futility of war. Surrounded on all sides by blood and bones and ash, they had once been souls and lives with hopes and dreams, now all cast away like dust in the wind, and I lamented their deaths in my despair. But mine was just one voice, one torment, a single note in a great cacophony that spread across the continent. Millions of lives lost and shattered, millions of voices raised in anguish and torture and suffering, as the devastation continued all over Maj'Eyal, from the ultimate force of destruction to Spellblaze. So there's the chapter of the Spellblaze, chapter 5. There's going to be at least 3 more, and I guess I'll have to do new characters because that's it for the money. I don't plan to be playing my mage, my archer, or my berserker anymore. So we'll see you guys next time, and we'll see what happens. Take care.